Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the IdOMUSIC Podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with CEO of Adela Management, Rico Brooks, discussing how he started at Peppermint Records, transitioning from managing artists like Boys in the Hood to super producer Sunny Digital, and keeping a great rapport with people over the years. Hey, it's Sammy for the first episode of our next season of the IdOMUSIC Podcast, and I'm honored and privileged to be sitting with Rico Brooks, who doesn't really need much of an introduction if you know music and great music executives. He is the one, Adela Management, running a full service management agency, and is the manager to some of your favorite producers, super producers at that. The list goes on and on. How you doing, Rico?
Great. Life is great. What's up, Sammy?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be back.
Thank you. Great introduction. I appreciate it. I'm like, damn, she talk about me?
Yes, I'm talking about you. Ever since I met you, Rico, honestly, I'm sure we met at the studio years ago, but you've always been and continue to be like very humble. You always speak, which we know is kind of rare in the music industry. A lot of people, especially when you're coming up, you're somebody like me, they don't always speak or they always act like they don't remember. But you in particular and some of my other, or some of the other executives and people I look up to in the industry have been that way of like just always being humble, always speaking, maintaining that character. Why is that important for you?
I think that as just coming from the South and coming from Albany, Georgia, that at the very basic level, we're all human beings, So, and I remember when I was coming up in the game, how some people just like embraced me. So I always wanted to do that and give back, just because you never know too. Also, it's better to know someone and not need them than need them and not know them. Exactly. So I would always speak because a lot of times those interns would be the next executive, the next whoever, manager. So I would always like to just be cordial with everyone because you never know. People remember that too.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
And it doesn't cost extra to be nice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I agree. Just to start, obviously, I already mentioned that you manage some really dope producers, and you have managed some really dope producers over the years. But you started working with artists, and even before that, working at a record store that was pretty prominent here in the city. So let's talk about, how did you get your start? Was music even something that you were interested in to begin with? How did it start for you?
Yeah, it started actually in Albany, Georgia. My uncles, they were DJs. Even before that, like my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather, we were in the church, so I was in the choir. Like, we just grew up around music. Even though we weren't allowed to play, secular music in the house, it was always around, when I got in my uncle's cars to, clean them up. He may give me 50 cents to vacuum out his car, but I'll be playing he may have a Rick James tape in there or Prince or The Time. And so I just was introduced to music at a very early age, and I just always had a love of music.
Nice. So starting, I know for you, and a lot of, I've heard this, how Peppermint Records was a part of a few people's careers coming up. Yeah. But it's a pivotal point for you. You might not have been where you are today had you not met some of those people coming in and out of the record store.
Correct.
So for people who aren't familiar, I didn't grow up going to Peppermint Records personally, and I'm sure people who are watching are younger may not have either, but talk about the significance of that record store, how you landed the job, why you even thought that would be a good place for you.
Yeah. So after I graduated from college, Mom was like, hey, it's on you. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll just get a job in the summer, and then I'll go to grad school. The plan was to just work that summer, then go to Howard for graduate school.
Nice.
So I was like, well, what do I want to do? In college, I worked at Kroger. I was just bagging groceries, just something to help, pay the bills, give me a little bus money and whatever. Mm-hmm. So once I graduated, I was like, let me just do something really fun this summer before I go to graduate school. So I went to the record store. Carl Harris hired me at Greenbrier Mall. Shout out to Carl Harris. And then I just started. And when I started working at Peppermint Music, it was just oh my God. So I had access to every CD that the promos that the record label reps would bring by, and I would look at the liner notes. We had Billboard magazines in there, and I was reading those Billboard magazines, and I was just this is it. What am I doing? This is what I really want to do. And then that, I think that, year Goody Mob had like that in-store that summer or something like that. And I was just seeing like people walking through the mall, like Redman. I almost lost my job. Redman was walking through the mall. I ran out there like a fan. It's like, come on. But then it's just like, I was just like, oh my God, this is really where I want to be. And then so I started off as a sales associate to third key, and third key to assistant manager to manager to district manager. And Peppermint Music, the thing that was great about those record stores is that they were in all the key urban centers. So we had one in Greenbrier Mall, West End Mall, South DeKalb Mall. So like these are all the urban centers. So if B2K was doing the in-store, they was gonna do it at Peppermint Music because they wanted those urban centers. And if Lil Wayne was doing in-store, Cash Money or anybody, like they would come to our stores,
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, and then I met so many great people, like from Jason Jeter, like he was walking around bringing the T.I. In the Street CDs.
Mm-hmm.
One guy in particular that I met that really changed my life was Block Russell Spencer. He had like a street dude. He came in, he had like all this money. He was like, hey, I want that. And I was like, no, hold up. And then he was just like, hey, I like you. Let's do some stuff. And I started working with him on Big Gee, and then that led to working with him on Boys in the Hood and Jock and Gorillaz. Oh, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, let's talk about what it is that you found yourself doing, which is management, essentially, and publishing and so many other services that your company provides. But early on, like, how did you get into the role of, like, going from Peppermint Records or Peppermint Music to essentially managing or touring? I know you, like, started, like, going on, like, the little Chitlin circuit.
Yep.
And, you can, like, read a lot of your story online. But well, let's just start with starting with like Boys in the Hood and Young Jock, and like what that experience was like for you early on, and what you learned from those experiences too.
Yeah, so first it was really when I was making all these connections, I really got a taste of it. Like, and I'll lead into Boys in the Hood and Block was like I met like Vince Phillips, entertainment attorney, he's a really good guy. Dan Brown, he had an artist named Bone Crusher, and we started like it was like, hey, we want to put these records out. So me and Vince and Dan, we came up with an idea. Let's start a distribution company, and we'll put the records through all the stores and even the independent stores. And so we did that with Bone Crusher. I think like we got like a buyout or something, but my portion of it was like $15,000. So here I am making like, I can't remember if I was making 30, 40, whatever thousand, but in one check I got like, oh my freaking God. I was like, what
do I do?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, like, hey, I want to do more of this because I'm like, I can get this. You mean I can work a whole year and get this, or half a year, and I can get this in one check. So I was like instantly drawn to and then we did it again like with Trillville and Scrappy, and we was just like, whoa, I like this a lot. And then I'm with Block. I had saved up some money. I was getting ready I wanted to transition and do it more full time. So like I said, he had
so grad school was out. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Grad school was out.
It was like I didn't even follow up. I didn't even like. I was just like, I'm going. Like this is what I want to do.
What did you go to undergrad for?
I was a history major, so I have a BA in history from Morehouse. I have an associate in history from Atlanta Metropolitan College. I think it was Atlanta Junior College at the time, but now it's Metropolitan State. But so I was a history major, so I love to read. So I read. That's why the billboards came in handy, and I started reading like biographies and autobiography of like industry figures, and it was just like coming to me. So I was using some of that know-how, some of those experiences that I learned from those books, and trying to apply it to like real life situations.
Nice. I'm happy that resonated with what you're doing, because oftentimes I know just talking to people on this podcast, a lot of people either didn't finish school or they might have finished school, and some people have their takes on like whether education was important for them. Yeah,
it's always been important to me, and even for African Americans, for a path forward, because like education was our key, our way out. Like in a lot of ways, we saw, hey, look, if you get an education, at least, because certain jobs you can't even apply for if you don't have a degree. Right. So I always said, even though I never technically like used my degree, I use my degree every day. I'm always reading a book. I'm always like, it helped me also, like going to school also gave me skills like putting presentations together. So like with these, even when we were presenting, like I would put marketing plans together and present them to artists, or if we were pitching it to a label, we would put our own marketing plans together and pitch them. So I learned a lot of that stuff.
Nice.
And it helped me in my career, and still helps me today.
Nice. So one thing that I was going to ask you is that, I mean, even then, like to start with your career, you were making these like significant connections with people. Maybe at the time you didn't really realize who they were. Like a Jason Jeter at the time was still, he was hustling and grinding at the same time that you were.
Yeah.
But those relationships were key, and the connections still follow you now.
Yep.
Did you know at the time like what to do with those connections, or like did they just kind of come into play over time?
Yeah, nah, it was just like, hey, I was just doing business. I knew I was in a special place. Atlanta was special, and I knew that I was in a special place being at Peppermint, because not only were we in a special place, but I was in this special place inside of a special place. So I'm in these record stores that everyone needs to get their records out, their CDs, their tapes, mixtapes, or whatever. And a lot of these artists, labels were calling me. They were like, hey, who is the next guy? I help artists get deals. They may know it, may not. They may not even know it. Like Universal would call me like, hey, what's up with this Roll With Me song? And I was like, and I would send them the song, and I may get a little finder's fee check. And I did that like several times. Like, I don't even know if like Yin Yang Twins know I got to check off for them. It wasn't a lot, Pastor Troy, Co-Ed. BJ knows because he gave me like a bottle of champagne, but I was just like passing information on because I was privy to it. Like, we would run our sales and we say, hey, look, if there's something breaking independently, let us know about it. Because they didn't know, like, streaming wasn't around, so they had to find out on the street level what was selling. They would call those independent record stores.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so how do you think that? Well, first off, let's go into like how you started in around like the early 2000s with a lot of the artists that you were working, or the talent that we were working with, and that was a very different time than it is now in 2020.
Yep.
There's a lot of things going on in the music business that some artists didn't even recover from financially, and like just things that you were exposed to, that you were privy to by having that experience on the road or working with certain artists. Can we talk about those times and how they've changed?
She's talking about like early times with Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood,
so like,
Young Jock.
Yeah, so we would like a lot of times records start like locally. So they start in the streets, in the clubs. So Atlanta, we all know it has a very big strip club culture. So we hit the clubs, we hit the DJs, and then we maybe do the mix shows. But we would go to like towns like Macon, and we would hit like Augusta, like South Carolina, North Carolina, and do those things. So these guys really got a chance to like hone their skills, like just being out there and seeing it. I made a lot of connections to which I still know now. Like, even though I don't really like work with that many artists, when I went out last week to the 2 Chainz listening party, like I saw a lot. They had a thing for the DJs, and I saw a lot of those same DJs, and it was just good to reconnect with those guys.
Nice.
But the way things have changed now, it's like now you don't necessarily have to go through the Chitlin market. I wish you did, because then you would get a chance to like know how to maneuver and talk to people. And now you can just put a song out via the internet, and it could just take off from your bedroom, which is cool too. And we made it access for everybody. But then sometimes artists don't develop those people skills and those personal social skills that go further than just dropping music online.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. You've been a part of several careers, like establishing from the beginning, or helping like establish that foundation for many artists. And at a point through management, especially, something that I've learned over the years too is that artists may outgrow their situation or decide to part ways. What can you attribute to being relieved of your of like those duties for artists who do decide to part ways, and how does it make you feel any type of way when you know that you like help start maybe like the foundation for them, or you understand what I'm saying? Or
I feel good. Like every artist that I've always parted with, just historically, like from Boys in the Hood, Jock, Zoe, like we've always had our pinnacle was always with me. You know what I'm saying? So if someone leaves me after like making millions of dollars, or like going #1 several times, or like just like having success. What I realized is success comes with its own challenges. So we prepare for success, but we don't realize that success has its own challenges. So now you got like people in your ear that weren't there from the beginning, and I'm cognizant of that. So I'm very cognizant of that. I understand that. So the times may change. Like when people's financial situations change, so they may feel like, hey, look, I don't need this guy no more. And it used to make me feel away like, oh, I help you build this. But now I'm like, I realize that what's ahead of me is better than what's behind me. So, and I everything I need. If they left me, they weren't a part of. They're not a part of my future. I learned from that, but I have to keep it moving. So I never let it stop me. I'll cry for the weekend, but Monday morning I'm up and I'm back at it. My mom used to say, "Hey, cry this weekend, but Monday morning you back at it." And I think I had done a good job of saying like, look, okay, well, where are they now? Where's Rico now? I don't look back because I have so much ahead of me. But when I do look back, I say, hey, that probably was a good move. Because like if Zoe wouldn't have like fired me and said, hey, I want to move on, I probably would have never started like managing producers. I probably would have never, if like certain things wouldn't have happened, I would have never forced myself to like, hey, Rico, you need to start your own management company. Hey, Rico, you need to start your own publishing company. Because I realized I can't expect people to treat me better than I treat myself. So I wanted certain things in life, and they didn't want to give it to me. So I was like, I go get it. I go get it myself. And I never let anybody like hold that over me. And to me, like, it's not everything is not about money. Some things is about principles and just like at a basic human level. From what we were talking about earlier, I'm a human. I'm a man. So even if I have a chance to make significant dollars from it, if it doesn't sit right in my soul or doesn't feel right, I will walk away from it. And I won't say no names, but some of the biggest artists, producers have come to me to manage them, but it just didn't feel right value-wise. And I said, no, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I have to sleep really good at night. And I know I sleep really good at night because I treated all my clients very fair. So I sleep real good at night. Sometimes I oversleep.
Well, I mean, just to to get this part out of the way, because it's been said, I've read several articles and you've been open about it, but like you've seen your fair share of shady business coming up. And that's why I said like that period of time in general for music in like the early 2000s and like even up until I feel like right now, it just, people are still trying to figure out like from the mixtapes to like streaming now and like all of that. And really for artists, like how to make money. Yeah. So I'm not extremely aware of like what the shady part of the business is, but I do know that you probably were privy to it coming up in that time. But what are some things that you know now that you wish you knew then, especially when it comes to like what you help producers and artists with now, which is like their publishing and like being able to actually make money from the things that they do?
Yeah, I would just say like, hey, look, if you have an agreement, a verbal agreement, let's make it more formal. Let's make it a written agreement. You know what I'm saying? Like document the things that you're trying to do. So like if you're a manager and if your client has a challenge with like signing an agreement, that's a red flag right there. I just seen like so many people change like when the money hit the table. And I always hated asking clients for their money, so I try to put things in place, whether it's a LOD, which just means letter of direction. That means that when you get your check, I get my check. I don't want to have to ask you for my money. I don't want to have to ask your business manager. I just want my check. I want to be caught. When you driving your Maybach, shoot, I want to have my Range Rover, whatever, Right. So I don't want to. So those are things I just want to put it on paper. We'll agree. We'll align value-wise, moral-wise, and then we put these agreements on paper and we discuss expectations and challenges and how we want to move this thing forward. And if we get to a point where we don't see, okay, that's fine. Just like people have a right to change their mind. I went to a restaurant, and I know it's not as simple as going to a restaurant, but I thought I wanted this, and then when I got there, I said, "Damn, let me try this." So it's fine for you to change your mind, but once you're in a agreement, certain agreements, just try to do it together, and then it's much easier. It's much easier for you to get your fair share versus someone just saying, "Oh, we had a verbal, but I was gonna pay you this, but now I'm gonna just chump you off because what you gonna do? You need this money."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I would never let no one hold money over my head.
So, what were when is it important for an artist or a talent to seek management? Like, when do you think that is important for someone's career? Is it necessary to begin with?
Yeah, I would always say like, it's when you have something to manage too, but also I would like artists to like do a little something for yourselves and see certain things so you can see the importance of management. A lot of guys don't realize the importance of a manager if they had one from day one until they like, when they don't have it and they start running into stumbling blocks, things so simple as like, they don't even realize like most of the time an artist, they do sound checking and they hit the stage, but they don't realize like there was a call with the promoter, there was a call with the travel agent, there was a call with the booking agent, there was a call we booked these shows, we booked the travel, we booked the hotels, you know, we booked the local ground, we booked the flight, we did everything. Like, and all I had to do was get on the plane and make the flight. And some of them couldn't even get on the plane. I'm like, really? You know what I'm saying? So I'm in a whole nother state waiting on a guy who didn't even get on the plane. And I started putting things in perspective as I got older. Like, man, I could be home with my daughter. You know, I could be home with my family. You know, I miss so many things I can't get back, like family reunions, funerals, weddings. You know what I'm saying? Like social gatherings, like that you can never get back. And then you look back in time, like, man, I missed all these for a client that I was with, but that client was not even there for me when I needed them or certain things, you know? Mm-hmm. So then I just started realigning, putting things in perspective. You know?
So how did those sacrifices put things in perspective? Like what exactly shifted for you? Like would you choose family reunions over clients now?
Definitely. If I book my work, I book my fun. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was talking to you before we started, I was like, hey, I did a week in LA for Grammys. Then I did 2 days personal in San Diego, you know, to regroup and reset myself, you know. So, and I learned that the importance of self-care, you know, because if I'm not there for myself, then I won't be able to be there for you. So I had to like set boundaries, and like certain days, if you call me on Sunday, unless I really, really like you, I probably won't answer your phone call, you know? Yeah.
I mean, and establishing those boundaries are important, especially for managers, because I think managers often, you know, we hear all the time this like glorified babysitting, the role of a manager in someone's career when you're literally like trying to manage their entire life. Like it's not just the career, but you know, especially with like artist management, it is beyond just that career. It could be their life situation, their mental, like all things that you have to keep aligned because it affects their career.
Exactly, and they need to know like managers. Like when I thought about it, I was reading this article on Willie Boston, like a very successful coach at Westover in Albany. High shout out to D'Antoni Winfield, 4 state championships in a row.
Nice.
But this is like during the like 90s and stuff. But he said one thing, like he was like, who motivates the motivators? Like, right? So I'm a motivator, like I'm a manager. So the coach is the motivator, but who motivates the motivator? You know what I'm saying? Like who motivates Curtis to like come in here and it's like, hey, y'all, we got to get this thing going. You know, we have to have our own
motivation.
Yeah, things that move us, you know?
Yeah. Well, I want to know like how you were able to shift from managing artists and getting into managing producers. You kind of touched on it briefly, like saying that if it wasn't for being let go from a artist situation, that you might not have even shifted your focus. But you seem like one of the maybe like pioneer, like game changer when it comes to that, because like people weren't really thinking about managing a producer.
Yeah.
But like your roster is, I mean, you went from working with Metro Boomin, you currently work with Sunny Digital, you've been working with him for a while.
Yep.
iBeats, so you got international producers, and the list goes on and on. I don't know your entire roster, but you have like a full agency over there that's doing a lot of things for these producers that I don't think that people saw that as a space.
Yeah.
So you kind of created a space for yourself.
Yeah. I just was like interested, like every now and then, like I get a need to like reset or like try something or do something new. So this was things that I was interested in doing, and like I wanted to get more into like producer management. I wanted to know more about publishing. So I took the classes, you know, I just said, hey, look, let me try working with a producer. And what I realized very quickly, very early on, is that producers, I could do several at a time versus like an artist or like 1 or 2 or 3. After that, you can't really do it because it takes so much out of you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically too. You know, you have to be there. They want to see where their commissions are going, you know, with the tours and with the studio time. But with producers, it was like a thing where this, you know, the internet was coming up, and sometimes you could just send me a beat and I can get it placed. And so that was like interesting to me because I was able to be more stable. Like I could still do it and not have to move as much. But then some of my producers became as big as the biggest artists in the world. And I was like, oh, here we go again. You know,
right.
I never complained. You know, I like the financial windfall, but it definitely takes a toll on you, you know?
Is it still the same, like you get a percentage of, like how does that work for producers?
Yeah, it generally like is a set fee. The industry standard is 15%, but if there's 2 guys, it may be 20%. it divided by 2, maybe 10 and 10, it may be 12 and 7.
And that's just on any booking that, like anything that you secure.
Yeah,
like,
it could be like just general over after the gross, adjusted gross, or it could be gross, just depend on the deal that you work out with the client and their lawyer. So say for example, if $100 comes in, then I would, if as a co-manager, I would take 10, the co-manager would take 10, so a lot of people don't realize like, oh, you taking all this money. But an artist, I remember I was talking to Ray Daniels one time, he was saying like, man, you realize like you could, if I'm making 10% or whatever, 20%, whatever number it was, he was like, you could, after I get my fee, you could still give like 3 or 4 of your girlfriends just what you gave me and still have more money than me, but I never complained about the fee. I know it is what it is. It's the standard is the standard. So, and if you have success over long term, that percent, even though it sounds small, it actually becomes very substantial.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really discuss the financial gain from on the management side, or like they don't know even what that looks like. So that's why I like to ask.
Yeah, but one thing that's very important to understand, like, so people talk about the gain, but like what is not as much as spoken on as much as that. Like investment. I put just as much in the work of like a Gorilla Zoe as I did of Jock. Zoe might have went like 250 or 300 or like gold. Jock went like platinum, multi-platinum. But the same amount of work still applies, like the same amount of time in the studios, the same amount of time selecting beats, the same amount of time on promo tour. We did only thing that another artist just caught on more. And so the work, and even some of the artists that never even came out, some producers that never came out, they never hit it, but I still sent their beats just as much as I sent successful producers. So there's certain things that are out of your control, but the same amount of work goes into it.
Let me ask you this, because like when you've been, we talked about it just in this short amount of time, like how you've been able to assess a situation and then move on, like if it doesn't align or like, it's time. Yeah. Like how do you know for yourself that, the situation is
every time I knew. I always knew before I knew. Like whether I was sitting in a room in Japan and I was just like, the feeling just comes, you just know. Like, you just know, like, this relationship is coming to a head. You don't know, like, but you don't know when, but I knew it was time to move on. So every time in my gut, I always knew there was time to move on. There was some points where I was like, how much is enough, and then how much can you take, like, and then what point is that breaking point? But I always knew I was rarely ever caught off guard. So I always play it through my mind, too. And I'm the type of guy, anyone who knows me, who's been around me, they know that, like, I think through situations like very thoroughly before I just make a decision. So it's never impetuous. It's never just like off the cuff rash decision. So it's always thought through. And you just know when you be around people and you've been around them for a long time, you just start noticing like subtle changes, whether like if they're still as nice as they used to be or they're still as cool, like if they're doing like weird stuff, like, wow, where'd that come from? I never seen that trait. Then you start seeing like different people hanging around and then certain things you can't get through to them. Mm-hmm. You just know like, hey, it may be time to move on. There's nothing wrong with change, because it changed, it's just a natural part of life. We are changing every day. I woke up this morning, I said, I never felt or smelled better. I was looking at what I was going to wear today and what cologne I was going to wear. And I was just like, you never know. I know more now than I've ever known in my whole career.
Yeah. I'm sure. Absolutely. And I was going to ask you, how have you learned about the music business versus like the industry, just like working over the years? Like you preach often about knowing the business, being, especially for the talent, like to know, what you should be gaining from your publishing and like how you should be handling the paperwork, something that we talk about all the time. But for you, like, being that eager fan working at Peppermint Music initially, just seeing the music industry versus like learning the music business, what have you learned over the time?
What I realized too very quickly, very early on, is like certain things are not in the book. So I can read Billboard day and night. I can read hitsdailydouble.com every day. I can read every biography, but what's not in the book is like what happens when you get to the show and like you're in Macon and it's like some gangbangers on stage and you like, look, I'm just trying to make it out here alive. Do I go say, normally I would say, hey, everybody clear the stage. These guys are here, Boys in the Hood, here to do a show, Or do I say, hey, look, these guys, we're trying to make it out of here alive. send them a bottle, whatever, and then just let us do our 10, 15 minutes and get out of here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I've seen a lot of situations handled correctly, and all it takes is one mishandled situation, and then somebody's dead. So those things are not in the book. Or like, what if you get there and you know better? Like I always told my road manager to, like, when you get to the city, get the money. If preferably, like, you meet him, you get the money, and then to secure the money, and then you go do the show. But the artist is running late, and the road manager is going straight to the show. The promoter's like, "We about to close, they about to shut us down. You got to get on stage right now." Not knowing, like, that's a no. You got to secure the money, But they run on stage and then do the show, and then while they're doing the show is over and the promoter's nowhere to be found. That's not in the book. It's like, what do you do?
Right.
So certain things are not in the book. Like, what do you do when the artist does some weird, goofy stuff, and now you have to handle the situation, So I learned just those supervisors. Actually, working at Kroger helped me understand, like, just customer service, like how to handle people, like, and it's just, sometimes it's not just what you say, it's how you say it too, and how you handle the situation,
Yeah. I mean, and I think that to also just, like, speaking to your character and your personal morals, again, like, something that's remained consistent from the beginning of just me knowing you, but I'm sure just over the years through your relationships with people in the industry. How do you maintain, like, that rapport? Because I'm sure you don't have, like, a negative rapport with anybody that you parted with, just based upon our conversation.
Yeah.
But, like, how do you maintain that? It's something that has nothing to do with you, some mess that you had to clean up, between what your artist may have done. How do you continue to just, like, maintain a good rapport with those relationships of people that you had to, kind of, like, be the buffer between?
Yeah. There are people, honestly, in this business that I personally may have had, like, a challenge with, but I always just try to be, like, calm and cool, and I try to be respectful, and because you never know, like I said, who you're gonna need and when you're gonna need them. And there's some people that I generally, like, just don't like the way they do business, but they just so happen to be in a space that I actually have to go through them to get certain things done. So it takes a lot of intestinal, like, calm or peace. It takes something from within just to hold your peace. Like, it's much easier to just slap out of them, you know what I'm saying? But it actually, the person that actually is able to hold their peace is actually the one that's the stronger, bigger person,
Facts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You pride yourself on connecting with people and being open-minded to talent, brands across the world. I know, actually, I forgot about that panel we did with the AUC. It's like,
Okay.
you, Barry. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. We were totally different. Barry was like, I was like, no, this is...
That was a good panel. But you spoke about some things on that panel specifically that I remembered that stuck with me. But mainly about, like, your traveling and, like, connecting with people and always being open-minded. Why is it important for you to have, like, a worldly view and perspective as a businessman, even taking on clients that don't live here?
Yeah, it's definitely more important now than ever, because what's happening now with streaming is that, like, guys are and young ladies are launching music directly from their bedrooms or their house, and they're becoming global stars. So, like, if you look at the Spotify, for example, you might look at the U.S. chart and then you look at the global chart. A lot of those, there's a lot of similarities, and a lot of those artists are just like those guys that was just relegated to the rap chart and now, like, on the biggest charts in the world. So it was important to me too, because I didn't want to just be local. I wanted to know. And once I started traveling, it was just like, oh my God. And then a lot of it happened by chance, but also took advantage of the chance. So, for example, with Bobby Johnson, who did 7-Eleven for Beyonce, and OG Bobby Johnson for Q, when we were getting ready to promote this song, me and Tunde, shout out to Tunde from LVRN, when we were getting ready to promote this song by Q, we were like, let's sign a producer too, because once we add value to the song and the artist Q is going to buy, as a byproduct, the producer gets to, even though it's not a byproduct because he actually, just from copyright, he has 50% of the song, but we want to secure him too. So when those things start to rise, everybody's going to rise together.
Right.
And we didn't just want to create value for him and not participate in that income.
Absolutely.
So, and then with iBeats, who did Galachester for Drake, Bobby Johnson lives in Bremen, Germany. iBeats didn't even speak English at the time when he got the Drake placement. But But B Weezy turned me on to him, and he's like, check this guy out. I listened. The beats were phenomenal. He sent me the beats, and I sent them. So what I've realized very quickly is that even though you may be here in this region or here in this country, the beats are universal. So like the rhythms are universal. Even though he didn't speak English, the beats were just universal and they just hit on a global level. So, and I'm always looking for the next guy it just so happened to be from another country, but the beats they're universal. The music speaks.
As long as the music is
there. Yeah, it hits. Yeah, we can figure out the language barrier. You know, I remember even with iBeats when he first came here. It's a funny story. We went to see Rick Ross, and Ross was just so fascinated. I'm so fascinated with him not speaking English. He thought it was like a mob type thing, like because he had to have an interpreter. He was like, "This is on some boss, you know, like you should never learn to speak English."
I feel like I met him the first time he came here.
Yeah,
and he could barely speak English.
Yeah,
he wasn't really speaking. He was just happy to be here.
Yeah, and I was like, no, learn to speak English because it's gonna help me. Right. I won't have to always be trying to figure it out for you. You know,
right. Yeah, that's dope. So Adela Thomas Management is your company. Also Hip Hopville USA is the publishing company. Yeah. So you say that you're the only talent, or like you're the only real like talent management agency that also acts as a full service label, essentially, just with all of the services that you provide.
I won't say I'm the only one. You know, I don't know if I said that. If I did, I misspoke.
You misspoke. Okay. Well, maybe not the only one, but you are one of the agencies that do kind of act as a label, essentially, which is the services that you're able to provide. What all do you offer your clients?
Well, we could take it from A to Z. We can take a record from inception to like, we can bring it home. We can bring it all the way home. Like, I've done it with my clients. Even though like the great thing about managers is that you're actually there the whole process from like recording. Even if you're not in the studio, once it's done, you maybe help the client get it mixed, get it mastered, send it to the label. Then we start the marketing process. Then we start whether if there's going to be a promo tour, if there's going to be travel, we could just help you push it all the way through. There have been times when I've actually paid for studio time. I've hooked up the features, hooked up the connections. So those are things that I just learned. So it's ATM. So it's not just because I have ATM Plus. It's not just music management. It's like there's music. So I have a lot of people don't know. I have like Adela Thomas. It's Adela Thomas Management, Adela Thomas Music, and then there's going to be Adela Thomas Music. That's what I'm sorry, movies. So it's going to be three management, music, and movies. So I won't have like big dreams. I have big plans, aspirations. Nice. So like that's why I added the plus because so it's ATM Plus. So it's for those management, music, and movies. So nice. I want to just continue to grow,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
add those. We may just have an idea, we may have a cool thing, whether it's for TV or for a content provider. We could just push those things through.
Dope. Dope, absolutely. How are you able to secure like your clientele? I know obviously through connecting with people and through like, just being aware, but you work with like some of the best and like I said, starting from like the beginning with those people. Do you think that's just something innate in you that you just have like an eye or ear for discovering the talent?
Yeah, a lot of it is I've been blessed, and I listen to my clients. Like most of the time, the creatives know other creatives. So if a creative says, "Hey, look, this guy's gonna be the next big thing," I actually listen. Even and I trust my guys. I trust Sonny. Like when he says, "Hey, you should listen to D Rich or B Weezy or Metro or whoever," and I trust B Weezy when he says you should listen to iBeats. And so when I listen and I trust. Trusted sources actually have been a part of my success. Nice. So, yeah, I listen.
Nice.
And sometimes I just, like with Young Coke, who did the Trap beat for Rick Ross, I may have just been laying in bed listening to SoundCloud, and the beat just hit me. I learned to follow the music, follow the gut feeling. I jumped up out of the bed. And when I jumped up out of the bed, I was like, I got to find out who this is to see, who is this? And when I follow that feeling, it usually leads me into a passage.
To the bag.
Yeah, leads me. Yeah. Don't go wrong.
Okay. What would you say the biggest mistake new producers make, and artists starting out?
I would say, I don't know if it's a mistake, but I would just definitely tell new producers that to get your beats out there, your beats and to do you no good on your computer, So if you need to secure them, however you need to secure it for your copyrights or whatever, that's fine, but get your music out there. So you're worried that somebody's going to steal your music, your sound or whatever, that could actually be the best thing that ever happened to you. Because if that happens to you, call me. I know some of the best lawyers in the business. As long as we have our proof, like the stems and those things, the email track, we're in good business.
Nice.
Yeah.
You said in one article that you see a lot of artists make bad decisions based upon money.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and how do you think artists can go about educating themselves so they don't make that mistake?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times we judge success based on money, which is one parameter of money, but it's not the only parameter of success. Money is not the only parameter of success. So, like, success could mean to you just say, look, I just wanted to publish this book. I just wanted to do this podcast. I just wanted to make sure my mom was straight. But when we judge success totally in a financial sphere, then we're making decisions based on that, where it's not necessarily like the right fit, whether it's like culturally, whether it's the right fit, like as you as a black man, if you're a black man or a black woman, if you're a black woman, or the company that you work with may not even do the type of music that you're representing. They just see that hip hop, I'm noticing a trend now, like hip hop is a dominant force. So now you're going to see some managers who would normally not manage hip hop stars, they're gonna be like, hey, I want to manage a rapper. Like, you never would have managed rappers if they weren't this successful. I was gonna be doing this whether rap was the top genre or not. I'm not just bag chasing. But so with that being said, okay, a company A may offer you $1 million. Company B may say, look, we'll give you 500,000, but we believe in you. We're gonna set you up for long-term success. And you may just say, hey, look, I don't need nobody to believe in me. I just need the bag. And not knowing that, once you get the bag, you still got to have someone that's going to help promote you, market you. Like, they can see you through. They can see your vision. I think Gotti mentioned it on the album. Like, there was always a disconnect. Luke, too, coming from the South. Like, so we had companies that are based in New York and L.A. They don't understand the cultural challenges that coming from the South, right? And so they gave you the money, but they don't know how to break an artist coming from the South. We have to move them a different way. So that's where that challenge could come in, and then that's where you might have taken the bag, but not knowing that, like, wow, now I don't have the support on my team. Then you have to go out and hire those people the people that were supposed to be doing the job. You have to hire those people on your own internally to do things that were supposed to be done by the label.
Facts. How many people work with you?
I think it's like 9 producers. I try not to keep count. I just
not your clientele, but yeah, like who?
My staff. Like, I have co-producers. I have co-managers. Like me and Tune, we do Bobby Johnson. Shout out to Tune. Me and Woe. Shout out to Woe. We do Tasha Couture, and then he helps me with Sonny, and whenever I needed stuff, whether when I was on the road, whether it was with Metro or whoever, he helps me with Quay too. And then I have partners. I have Desiree. She helped me she helps me with like the back end paperwork. And Brittany, she just decided to do something different. She wanted to do more creative stuff. So shout out to Brittany, man, for being there for years for me. And so I have like different partners on different projects too.
Nice. So you said the future of ATM Plus and Rico Brooks is, venturing into maybe film, some TV stuff. Yeah. What else is in your future? What do you foresee?
I just see a lot of travel, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of cool stuff. My daughter definitely, being there for her, and just like continue to provide opportunities for my clients.
Nice.
Yeah.
And my last question, like you kind of answered it, but I want to know, like, ultimately, where this hunger comes from. Like, why do you do music? What's the appeal to you?
I think it's the passion. It's innate. It's just inside. It's not like something. I went to church yesterday, and the pastor was talking about, like, you can't want it more than someone else wanting it, which I already knew this based on working with certain clients. And then I would talk to some of my partners, and they would be just so frustrated with clients. They're like, man, if he would just. But I'm like, he just has to feel like that. It can't be you. It can't be me. And I realized early on, like, I just cut my losses. So I may have cut a financial thing, but it kept me peaceful inside, because if I'm always struggling and tormenting and trying to get a guy to do the right thing, when I see those traits, I just like cut them off early.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best advice that you can give, honestly. Well, Rico, we're running out of time, but I know I could probably talk to you for years. I'm sure we'll have another conversation to get into more of this, but tell the people where they can find you on social media and your company on social media if you have a page.
My fans only page is. I'm joking. Instagram, Twitter is Brooks Rico, BROKSRICO. That's it. And on my website, AdelaThomasMusic.com. AdelaThomas.com. Yep.
Yes. Yes, and as always, thank you for sitting down with me. And you guys can find this podcast on IDM Podcast on social media, as well as myself at Sammy Approved. And Rico Brooks is the man, so if you need anything, holla at him, okay?
Thank you.
Sonic.